I love Crash, and what about you guys? I'm so excited to be doing this video as my first review on the channel. I've been playing Crash Bandicoot ever since I was 3 years old on the PlayStation 1. I was born after the first game came out, and as a matter of fact, Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped is just about as old as I am. The first game came out in 1996. Here we are today in 2020 getting a sequel to the third Crash Bandicoot Warped, which came out in 1998. Yeah, Crash has had a lot of games come out over the years. Think Wrath of Cortex, Twinsanity, and then a lot of things began to go south from there. But the original game series on the PlayStation 1 was made by Naughty Dog. They made Crash 1, Crash 2, Crash 3, Crash Team Racing, and Crash Bash. Then Activision picked up the IP and began making it their own versions of the Crash games. They have never been the same since Crash 3 Warped when it comes to the regular platformers of the series. These are some of my favorite games, and the platformer genre comes in second place for me, right behind shooters. I love these, I love the collectathons they put you in, and I could not wait to play Crash Bandicoot 4. It's about time. Now these games are 20 years old, so Crash 4 had to do a lot of things to modernize it to the current generation of consoles and the new gameplay style where platformers is not as predominant as it was in the early 90s to late 90s. Crash Bandicoot 4 has done a lot of things that are great and a lot of things that are questionable that make it stuck in the past. Let's get into it. If you've played Celeste recently, you know that platformers on current gen can be hard. Crash Bandicoot 4 is no exception to this. I don't think it's as tough as Celeste, but it is definitely up there. I'm playing on classic mode where you have lives, and I have yet to see a game over screen, which is pretty good considering I don't know these maps at all. However, with the modern setting, you can play it just like Celeste, where you don't have lives and you have unlimited lives. There's a death counter, and it tells you how many times you've died in the level, but you can never see a game over screen. I recommend this for any newcomers to the platformer genre, and if you're not that good at video games. Now, if you're looking for a more traditional Crash style, or as Neo Cortex would say, a smashing blast from the past, I recommend going on classic mode. This is the standard lives gameplay that we're all familiar with. When you run out of lives, you get a game over screen. Now, as far as the gameplay goes, Crash Bandicoot changes up the formula a little bit with new masks. As you're seeing in the gameplay, I don't want to go too deep into the game because there are some spoilers, and I think the masks are the best part of the game, along with the additional characters that you get to play. I don't want to spoil that for you because it is kind of a treat, and it's a little bit of a different taste to the Crash Bandicoot franchise. These masks provide different abilities, such as changing the objects that are on screen or the platformable objects, as well as zero gravity, slowing down time, and a super spin. As far as the characters go, there's characters that have been in the games forever that are now currently playable, and they're really fun and different to some extent. I think that when you first start up the game, the double jump in this is going to take a little bit of getting used to. It's not as responsive as I would like, and it kind of feels like a little bit of an input latency at first. Maybe that's because I haven't played the Sane trilogy in a while, but it just feels a little different. It feels a little clunky, to be honest, but now that I'm towards the end of the game on the last dimension, I can say that you do get used to it as it goes on. One thing that I would like to mention, and my biggest issue with this game, comes with the rail grinding. Ratchet & Clank does a great rail grinding mechanic where you get on it and you can avoid objects and jump in between and basically have fun going super fast down a beautiful looking environment. Same can be said with Crash, except the addition of boxes and more obstacles than I'm used to. The boxes are almost impossible to get to at certain times, and you need perfect timing or advanced knowledge that they're there. And the other thing is, a lot of the platforms in this game, specifically on the rail for me, seem to fall a little bit flat. So they seem like they're coming at you, and that depth makes you think you need to jump at a certain point. But as we know with Crash, it's almost like a rhythm game, and if you jump prematurely, you're going to die. And that's what happens with a lot of these textures. They just look flat, or it looks like they're farther away than they really are, and by the time that you land on them, you actually either overjump or you jump too early and you're gonna die. Maybe that's a me problem, but that's just something to be aware of going in. The graphics are beautiful here, but they do fall flat at times, especially for a 3D platformer, which you want to be perfect. I will say that this game is very difficult towards the end. I would not compare them to the Soulsborne franchise, but they are a little bit harder than the typical Crash Bandicoot game. I'm still in between on if I think Celeste is more difficult or Crash is. Right now I'm leaning towards Celeste being the most difficult platformer that I've played in recent years, but I will say Crash 4 holds its own in the difficulty department, especially towards the end. There is a lot of levels that are really cool towards the end, but you're going to be dying a lot. Know that going in. And I think that that's a great thing for people who want longevity out of a game, but I think that it's going to be very difficult for people who are perfectionists, because as we know, the Crash Bandicoot franchise requires you to do time trials. Now, the Platinum Trophy for this game was something that I was looking forward to. In the Sane trilogy, I got the Platinums for all 3 games. They're not overly difficult, but the time trials are a Platinum blocker for many. In this game, the time trials are going to be a Platinum blocker for Crash Bandicoot veterans. They require you to get the Platinum Relic, which is the best time in the level, and you're going to need to beat the game to be able to unlock something that allows you to do it. But even then, these levels are insane to be able to do in one life on what is essentially a speed run. Not to mention that you're going to have to get perfect gems. Each level has a hidden perfect gem where you have to get every box in the level without dying. You have to go through the inverted mode where you're replaying the entire level except mirrored while getting every box. This is a completionist's nightmare, to put it simple, and the levels are really long and, like I said, really difficult. I get it, people want harder games, but for a Crash Bandicoot game, I think they went a little bit too extreme, especially on the Platinum list. That does, however, lead into replayability. With all of the levels being this difficult and there being a lot more boxes, I've noticed there being levels with over 400 boxes. That means you're going to be able to replay these a lot if you're going for that completion status, or 106%, which is the game's final true perfect score in the game. 100% does not mean you've done everything, 106% does. It is estimated that the trophy is going to take veteran players 40 to 50 hours. Now, mileage may vary, but for the most part, you're going to be wanting to look up guides on a lot of these. There are also cool things called flashback tapes. These allow you to go to what would essentially be the original game's Dr. Neo Cortex levels, where they had a lot of TNT crates, mainly 2D platforming, and a lot of puzzle solving on how you're going to bash the crates to make it to the end while getting 100% completion. These are probably my favorite levels in the game because they truly are original Crash Bandicoot. And the nice thing about them is you can replay them as many times as you want, and there's typically checkpoints, which were not present in the first game when you got to the Cortex levels. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is the different characters in this game. You get to play as a lot of them. Now, one of them, the first one that you run into in the game, has a grappling hook, which is really unique and cool. It provides a new dimension to the Crash Bandicoot franchise, and you get to do things that are a little bit different. However, I cannot state this enough, that the controls with the grappling hook are clunky. You'll be looking at something that you need to grapple, and you'll miss it. You'll jump, and you'll miss the hitbox for it. It's insanely frustrating, especially for a game that's rated E10+, to have controls this clunky. This is not a Demon Souls game that you need, or a Dark Souls, albeit, where you need perfect inputs. This is a platformer. You should be able to mess up a little bit, or you should be able to not hit the hitbox exactly where it needs to be. Especially if you have to wall jump to get it, it should be pretty much magnetic and clicky. It's not. It's frustrating. There are other aspects in the other characters as well that I like, but again, just either whether it be hovering or changing objects into jello so you could bounce on them, it's just frustrating at times because you can't do it perfectly. That was the beauty of the original Crash games. You could play as Coco, you could do the ride missions, but essentially there's nothing crazy that is necessarily unfair. Yeah, the hitbox, if you will, of some of the objects were kind of crazy or clunky, especially on levels like Road to Nowhere. But in this game, it's not the obstacles themselves, it's the mechanics in the game that you would expect to be fleshed out, especially considering this, I would say, is more of a AAA title. It's definitely not an indie game, and Toys for Bob and Activision have plenty of money to have perfected this to its ability. Overall, I am biased. I love Crash Bandicoot, and I'm so happy to be playing a new Crash game in 2020. I hope that you guys enjoyed the gameplay, even though I am not as good as at the game as I used to be. But let me tell you, this game is a must-have for platformers. It is the best platformer I have played since Celeste, and going backwards from Celeste, it has been a while since we've gotten a good platformer like this. I love the Mario games, but nothing will be as good as Crash Bandicoot to me. Whether you're a Crash veteran or somebody who's looking for a fun game to chill back and not just die due to Call of Duty Warzone and internet connection not being in your favor, this is a game you must check out. I think that the $60 price tag is a little steep. Maybe wait for it to hit about 40 bucks. I think that is more fair. But overall, the game is about 6 hours long if you're a veteran at the Crash franchise. 10 hours if you're not as good as you used to be or new to platforming in general, and it'll keep your kids busy, your family busy, and it's not just a game for hardcore gamers. This is definitely a family game. I'd give it overall an 8 out of 10. Let me know what you think about Crash Bandicoot 4 in the comments down below if you have it, or go and pick it up and let me know your review as well. This is One Up Betty. Thanks for watching. Please remember to hit the subscribe button, hit the like button if you liked the video, dislike it if not. Tell me why in the comments below so I can improve for my next one, and I'll see you next time.
And fix this before some putz with a big evil plan and a bigger ego does something monumentally stupid.